planet's on fire. It's a real code red. Got us by the balls, we're being slowly bled. All the swollen puppet heads, they propagandize fake chocolate points, flat out lies. A house full of mirrors, it's a lousy reflection. Run hard left, it's a true direction. Democracy's in trouble, this news isn't fake. Everything we fought for is truly at stake. Border to border, coast to coast, it's time to cue the talent and meet our host. It's podcast by George. All right, folks, it's showtime.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. Got a good one today. I'm really looking forward to this because you've heard me talk a lot on the podcast about, people that are just standing by and watching the world implode while they watch their favorite sports, daytime dramas and, reality shows. Honest to God, I don't know what's up with some people. But there are those that are talking the talk right now, sounding the alarm bell loud and clear, and I'd like to think that I'm doing that. But there are also people that are doing the heavy lifting, the people that I say are walking the walk. And that's what took place in the heartland, in Des Moines, Iowa, at the state capitol on Valentine's Day afternoon. They had a picket line sponsored by the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture, and it was right in front of the Capitol building, right on the west steps. So Podcast by George went remote. We got out there. They're trying to stop these CAFOs, and for folks that may not know it from around the country, a CAFO is a concentrated animal feeding operation. Thousands upon thousands of cruelly treated animals being inhumanely put into these facilities, and they're fouling our waters. They're ruining the air quality in this state, and they're also contributing mightily, say the scientists, to the climate catastrophe because they're creating methane because of all of the manure. It's all going up into the atmosphere, and they believe it to be one of the leading causes of what's causing the climate to collapse. So these folks are calling on or for a moratorium. And if you've never seen a CAFO, you ought to check one out. I mean, you can kind of get a look online, but they try to conceal this from the public view. If you actually ever got in a CAFO, ever saw one, you'd seriously consider becoming vegetarian and maybe even vegan. Well, today we're going to meet some of the picketers, some of the people doing that heavy lifting out at the state capitol in Des Moines. Before we talk to those folks, we're going to put on Chris Peterson. Now, he's one of the senior organizers of the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture, and he was out there talking to Podcast by George. Okay, so Podcast by George, the live line today is at the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines. And we're here with Food and Water Watch and a number of different organizations that are going to do a Valentine's Day picket out here. And we're talking to Chris Peterson. Chris, which group are you with, and tell us why you're here today?
Well, this Food and Water Watch, a bunch of other groups are underneath the banner of the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture. I and Diane Rosenberg, who couldn't be here today, were co-founders of the Alliance about 7 years ago, and we got 26 groups now involved in this.
Good, and I can tell from your button that you're all about family farms as opposed to the corporations that have taken over agriculture.
Well, yeah, they ran the family farmers out of business. For years we've been whining about getting ran out of business and also not getting a price, and now guess what? The consumer's on the other end, $20 ribeyes, really? The consumers are getting the shaft right along with the family farmers now, and the corporations in between there. They keep milking the money right out of the state and polluting it.
And I got to ask you, Chris, doesn't it just gall you that they're defending the corporate farming by invoking the name of family farmers and small farmers? I mean, they're the ones that are suffering. They're the ones that have been run out of the business, and yet the corporations are getting all the subsidies and all the consideration.
Well, exactly. You know, farm bills over the decades have been wrote for the money for the big business, for the corporations, basically not the family farmers, and we keep getting thrown off by the wayside. And you know, they think bigger is better, and you know, look what we got, you know, in the state now. You know, a little bit of everything bad going out in the rural areas.
All right, pal. Chris Peterson, thanks for doing it, pal. I appreciate you talking to Podcast by George.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, man.
You bet.
That's well said. Folks, that's Chris Peterson from Clear Lake, Iowa, and look what we've got now indeed. Well, we also had a chance to visit with the Dallas County Soil and Water Conservation Commission's current chairman, who was out on the line on Valentine's Day at the state capitol. His name is Eric Wessel. All right, so we're back here at the state capitol talking to Eric Wessel. He's the Dallas County Soil and Water Conservation Commission member that's here.
Current chairman.
Yeah, current chairman for the group. Tell us why you're here today.
Well, back in 2014, they built a confinement next to my home, and it's had an impact on my life and the way my family lives. And so I got on the commission so that I could have some sort of an impact, and we're working on it. And Iowa's got some of the worst water in the state, and most of that is due to agriculture. And most of that agriculture is due to hog farms and hog confinements, and spreading the manure. So that's why I'm here, is to try to put an end to that, at least until we can figure out how to solve the problem. There's no sense in building more confinements if we don't know how to handle the waste we already are producing.
So tell us a little bit about how your home life, how did it change when this facility went in next to you? Because it's happening in a lot of places around the state.
Yeah, well, it's about 0.8 of a mile away, straight southwest, so I get the summer breeze, the prevailing winds and stuff. We don't put anything out on the clothesline anymore. We used to do our laundry and hang it out on the clothesline, like, you know, and you never know when the wind is going to change and when it's going to come in. So we are often forced off our porch, forced out of the yard because we can't just enjoy it, you know. Yeah, and those are the primary things. But since I'm also on the Soil and Water Conservation Commission, I know where the fields where they are doing the manure management plans and they're doing the application, and that is the headwaters of the Walnut Creek in that area. And so that's all going into the Des Moines water system. He's getting the Raccoon River, where the city of Des Moines is getting their water for drinking water from. And so there's a lot of things that are impacted that way.
What about the impact on shallow wells? I mean, people that are using the old style out on the farm water, you know, not getting it from rural water, they're not getting it from the city, they're getting it out of 25 feet in the ground. I mean, can they even drink that kind of water anymore?
I wouldn't. I you know, I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you for sure. I wouldn't eat a fish that I caught in a river in the state of Iowa at this point in time. You know, so and we used to. My grandfather had a boat, and we fished every day or every weekend when we would go out there. And I wouldn't eat a fish in the state of Iowa.
And you know, part of the process has to be awareness, and that's what this is all about today.
Yeah. I mean, just making people aware. You know, I've talked to people in coffee shops. I work here in Des Moines, live in Dallas County, you know, and I stop in and every once in a while talk to people in a coffee shop, you know, and they don't really have any awareness of a water quality problem, you know. And I've got friends that are involved in this new river trails that are going on in the Des Moines and the Raccoon, and you know, I don't know how anybody's going to ever have an event there, like a kayaking event or a whitewater thing, if they get in there a second time at all, because they're, you know, you end up with flipping a kayak and you get a mouthful of water, and you're going to be having a mess, you know, coming out of both ends for a few days. I mean, it just does. So I mean, there's a lot of fecal material in there. It's just, so I don't know.
Well, I really appreciate you stopping by, folks. That's Eric Wessel. Good luck, pal.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'd say Eric knows his crap, literally, and of course he's had it forced upon him like so many people have directly right here in the heartland. But I'm telling everybody that this is a big issue for everyone indirectly. If you're within range of my voice, if you can see my not so good looking visage, you are being affected by these CAFOs because of the impact, the negative impact that they're having on climate. All right, so let's continue here. That Valentine's Day picket for a moratorium on CAFOs at the state capitol, demand for clear water. And the event was kicked off by John Asprey. And John is the chair of the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture. He's a senior organizer for Food and Water Action.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? Well, we're going to start the formal event. I'm glad folks have gotten a chance to talk with each other a little bit. My name's John Asprey. I am a senior organizer with Food and Water Action, and I'm also the chair of the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture. So we're a coalition of more than 25 groups who have come together to advance a moratorium on concentrated animal feeding operations, also known as factory farms. Yeah. So we have a wonderful event in store today. We have a good old-fashioned picket line. Taking some inspiration from the UAW workers who are just on strike. And it comes with a little bit of a twist because, as you all know, today is Valentine's Day, and we figured it'd be a great opportunity to show Iowa some love. So for so long, the meat integrators and their front groups have tried to paint us, advocates of a factory farm moratorium, as anti-progress, anti-agriculture, and even anti-farmer. But we all know that that's not the truth. We're out here today fighting for a moratorium because we are fighting for what we love. We love clean water. We love clean air. And we love independent farmers. Yeah. So before we talk more about what we love, I want to take a moment to recognize some of the harms that not only factory farms but our current system of agriculture have done. So, the roots of our modern agriculture system lie in land theft and in stolen labor. So when we talk about any topic, but especially agriculture in particular, it's essential that we pause to recognize that the land that gave rise to our modern food system is not necessarily was taken by force. So in order to create a better food and farm system for the future, we must acknowledge and reckon with that past and present harm. So first off, I just want to recognize and acknowledge that the stolen land that created our home here today in Des Moines is from the Iowa, the Sioux, the Sauk, and the Meskwaki people who were forcibly removed from this land for the benefit of white settlers.
Well, that's John Asprey, folks, and he's bringing it all into context here. I mean, that was a great opening address by John. And I would say don't forget those native Iowans that he spoke about. When they were running things, you could drink the water from the rivers and streams, believe it or not. My God, you can't even wash your hands in it anymore. You can't put your dog in the water any longer. That's the kind of stewards they were of the land and water that they lived in and on, and look what we're doing with it. You can't drink the groundwater any longer. I mean, honest to God, pristine aquifers, 25 feet below the surface, and you can't drink from it because of what we've done, and these CAFOs have a lot to do with it, contaminated by pig crap. So here's some more video of the pickets, these folks walking out there in front of the state capitol. I can't say enough about the cold and thankless work that they were doing. Man, it was below freezing, and these folks really deserve, all the accolades they can get. Good on them for doing this type of thing. I went up and grabbed one of the picketers to share an interesting perspective, a story about her granddaughter. Folks, here's Diane Lahr. You told a great story about your granddaughter and your experience with CAFOs out in the once beautiful countryside of Iowa. Tell us about that.
Well, I got to really get involved with this because my granddaughter was doing a cross country, and I looked and I just kept smelling this smell that people used to say, oh, that's money, that you're just smelling money. But I thought, here's hundreds of runners, their parents, their other kids, coaches, and yet they're inhaling all the smell, because with the smell comes particles too.
Yes.
So that I was like trying to decide, should I yell, quit, or at least talk to somebody later on and ask about how far those CAFOs or the farms were. But I worried about all the kids running and the people that were there. It was really overwhelming.
You've got the particulate in the air, and of course that's a poison, and what people don't realize is that's being caused or created by something that's also going down, seeping into the groundwater. So
Exactly.
You're getting the worst of both worlds, above in the air and then below your feet into the groundwater. You know, the granny element of the is really interesting, because this is all about the future generations. And I mean, we may make it out of this relatively unscathed. We've seen changes like you saw with your mother as an example, but these future generations are really going to see a big change.
Yeah, I think even now we're seeing a lot of changes. So many waterways, over 700 in the state are compromised, and majority, it all points back to the runoff, whether it's the chemicals or it's the manure. And what are we leaving our grandchildren, your future generations? And they're going to look back and say, why didn't you do something, or what did you do?
Yes. And you're doing something. That's great.
We're trying.
Yeah, thanks.
We are trying.
Yeah, you gave a great speech. What's your name again?
Diane Lahr.
Okay, Diane. Good luck. Thanks
Yes,
again.
thank
On
you.
Valentine's Day particularly.
Yay!
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, gotta love that. That's Diane Lahr. Well, you know, the picketers were on the line for several hours on this cold and windy day out on the west steps of the Iowa Capitol on Valentine's Day. I want you to meet another hero. This is a great individual. It's Jan Corderman. Iowa State Capitol here today, and we're talking with the Food and Water Watch folks in the Alliance. What is the Alliance again?
It's the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Ag.
Okay, and this is Jan Corderman, and she's a part of those groups, and she's here today to talk about the moratorium on CAFOs. And Jan, I thought your presentation was very meaningful, because a lot of people don't see much solution to this. They think that there's nothing that can be done, but the moratorium is really significant. Could you explain what's important about a moratorium for this?
Yeah, I think it's very significant. It is just what it says. It's a moratorium on any new or expanding confined animal feeding operations, really to give us a chance to look it all over. Gives the farmer a chance to say, is there a better way to do this? Is there a way that doesn't jeopardize our water? Is there a way that doesn't jeopardize our health? Because the fumes and the smells and property values go down. There's a lot of impacts on confined animal feeding operations. Are you a fisherman, George?
Yeah, I used to be. I lived
Okay.
on a small farm too, so I know a little bit about
You know a
all
little
this.
bit about
yeah,
it then?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, every time there's water impairments, there's fish kills. I've taken my dog out to go, my dog used to love to wade, taking him out to Easter Lake.
Yes.
Big signs,
Yes.
do not let your dog drink the water.
Right.
It'll kill him.
Right.
So we can't enjoy our environment, our beautiful Iowa landscape, because of the effects of these CAFOs. And then when you think about it, 2,500 hogs, 85,000 chickens under one roof, all the poo going down below them, all the pee going down below them, untreated, gets finally put into a lagoon, and if the lagoon leaks or they over apply it, because they do try to apply it to use fertilizer on the fields, but if they over apply it or the ground is frozen or any number of things, it can leach into our water system.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time that the animal cruelty component of this is not to be overlooked. I mean,
That's
we
right.
just don't need to be slaughtering animals on the scale that we are to overeat the way that we do. I mean, it's a humiliation. It's a crime against humanity in a lot of ways. And what you're calling for with the moratorium is just to hit pause, just to get people, your average everyday consumer and your legislator to step back and take a second look at this.
That's right. That's right. The DNR has a hard time with enforcement. They're always cutting staff. There's issues that aren't anybody's fault, but that just go unnoticed. under the radar. So let's just take a close look.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for talking. That's Jan Corderman, folks. Yeah, here at the Iowa Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we end this podcast by George, on location at the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines, Iowa, I got to admit that, doing this podcast over the last, it's 4 years that I've been doing this, it gets kind of depressing at times because it just seems like people don't get it or they just don't want to deal with it. And you just watch everything going south, everything corkscrewing us into the ground, and it can get kind of depressing that people don't even want to be made aware of the circumstance. But then every now and then comes along a little bit of a day brightener. Here's two young people at the state capitol. I think they came when they got out of classes. They're college kids from Grinnell College. They're bright, they're witty, and they really understand what's happening. And they're prepared to take the reins and do something about it. It's Sam and Hannah from Grinnell College. Check this out. Okay, great. So we're back here doing a recording at the Iowa State Capitol here for the CAFO moratorium that just got a little boost today. We had a state legislator come out and say that they're going to have not only a public hearing, but if that doesn't get a moratorium, they're going to have an independent hearing scheduled for April, and that's got the folks excited here. Now, we've had some of the people from my age group on earlier, some of the older folks. We've got a couple of young people now, and I'm really excited about that. So I know this is Sam, and Sam's from Grinnell College. Introduce yourself, Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam Takahashi. I'm from Grinnell College. I'm a second-year student there right now, studying biology.
Okay, great. And your name?
I'm Hannah. I'm also from Grinnell College, and I'm a fourth year studying environmental justice.
Oh, good, great. Well, environmental justice is what this is all about, obviously, and I love the sign that you've got there. And I'm all about the animal cruelty element of this too, as far as the senseless killing and slaughter of all of these animals to overfeed a population that's approaching the morbidity rate of ancient Rome, for God's sake. I mean, it just isn't necessary any longer, and we're poisoning our environment. I guess my question for you would be academically now in the universities. Are they talking about climate change a lot, and are they talking about the environment a lot?
Yeah, that's been a really big focus on a lot of classes. I mean, that's literally my major, so I do study that a lot. But we do focus on how climate change is impacting the social aspects of life as well. So not only the biosphere and other kind of aspects from the science side, but also the social side. And they're a lot larger than I think people realize, which is another concern that people need to be focusing on.
Now, am I correct? I've heard some climate scientists say that one of the leading causes of the climate catastrophe is methane produced by animal agriculture in these CAFOs and industrial farms.
Yeah, so when you have a bunch of animals, whichever kind, all confined in a certain area, they produce a lot of waste. And when that waste gets kind of put out into the environment or stored in a certain way, it kind of leaks methane coming off of it. So in the same way when trash breaks down, methane is released as a gas because that's part of the decomposition process. That happens with fecal matter from animals. And so when you have this much waste being produced in such a tight confinement, you'll have these giant pockets of methane being released into the air.
Wow. Well, Sam and I know that we talk a lot about hogs, and that's a big deal here in Iowa, but your background's a little bit more on the dairy side, coming out of northern Illinois up towards Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I grew up with a lot of cousins, aunts, and uncles who lived up in Wisconsin running those dairy farms, and I know that as time went on, it became harder and harder for them as small independent farmers to maintain that situation, and their children, folk younger, a little bit older than me, but also my age, had less and less interest in really fighting every day to keep their operations in check. So it's really hard with these larger farm operations being funded by major corporations.
Right, and they're just like with the hog farming operations they talked about earlier, these large businesses, these large industries and corporations are actually strangling, pushing out, making it untenable for the smaller producers like your family members and the people that I grew up around with. Exactly. I mean, they can't make a living.
Yeah, it's just really hard, and all it takes is a couple hard seasons, and all of a sudden you're not able to hold that land much longer, and those big corporations can sweep in because they can handle those costs for a few seasons, and
it's all about the scale. I mean, It's got to be a huge scale to make a living at it. Well, that's great. Maybe the final question here would be, I go to a lot of these types of events, and they are mostly some of the older people. What got you guys involved in this, interested in it?
So Hannah might be able to speak to this better, but I'm a member of our Student Environmental Council. Hannah is one of our leaders in that situation, and we got people helping us out, inviting us, and getting us involved. So it's all we can do to help out the community that we're in.
Oh, that's great, Hannah. What got you into it?
I mean, you kind of look at the social impact it has on people, and I think people forget that our world is very interrelated and that you can't have one without the other. So we're in a water class right now together, and we're talking about how Iowa is actually the lead contributor to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And so it's really hard to have things happening in Iowa relating to other parts of the world, and you see the impact it has on small farmers, and you see the impact it has on animals, and the impact it's having on the environment, and you just have to question what it's all for if there's a simpler solution to that, and a moratorium would be one of them. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Good on you. Yeah, keep going. Man, is that any good? That's Sam and Hannah from Grinnell College. And, I hope you enjoy this type of perspective on Podcast by George, because I tell people all the time, it ain't about me. I'm nothing extraordinary. You can ask anybody that knows me. Hell, ask my wife. I'm nothing special, folks. I'm just doing a podcast. I'm just trying to showcase people that are special and doing something extraordinary to save us all. And putting a moratorium on these CAFOs is a logical starting point. We got to start someplace. Let's just stop it right now. Step back, like Jan Corderman said, and think about what's up. And apparently that's going to happen because a state legislator came out and spoke to the group and said that he had just had some success on a bill or some legislation to have a general hearing on a moratorium. And if that doesn't succeed, he's going to have a specific individual hearing on this. And folks there were quite gratified to hear it. So they did get some progress made, and it's very gratifying and well-deserved by the people out in front of the state capitol on Valentine's Day, walking the walk, kind of on strike, carrying these pickets. And folks, if you like Podcast by George, I always encourage everybody to follow along. And to do that, you can subscribe on YouTube. It's free. Ring the notification bell. Like us there. You can like us and follow us on Facebook. Podcast by George is free everywhere. And to find all the places that we're seen and heard, go to podcastbygeorge.com. Pick an icon. Pick a platform where you'd like to follow along. Subscribe free, and you'll get each and every episode. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another Podcast by George.